everybody to the Blacks at Xbox panel, working in the gaming industry, what you really need to know. I think I can speak for all of us to say we are so excited to be invited to this event with the Black College Con, and to be able to just kind of share a little bit about who we are and what we do and how we got into games here at Xbox. And so to start, I'll introduce myself. I'm going to be the moderator for this panel. My name is Marcus Morgan. I come from Denver, Colorado, but right now I live in Los Angeles, and I actually lead product marketing for a lot of our new studios, including Obsidian Entertainment and The Initiative. So we're all over, not just all in Seattle. You know, there's one of us at least here in Southern California. I'll kick it over to Sierra. I don't know if you want to go next, where you're from, what you do.
Yeah, so I'm Sierra McDonald. From Chicago, South Side. I've been at Microsoft for 17 years and been in Xbox for over 12 years. And currently I lead our cross-product effort on the Xbox product engineering team. So for example, leading up to the Xbox Series XS launch, I worked on our cross-gen gaming strategy and plans, smart delivery, things like that.
Sierra is real important around here, but we'll get super into what we do, like in terms of our specific roles here in a little bit. Miles, you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. Hey, what's up, everyone? Good morning or good afternoon for you all on the East Coast. I'm Miles Anderson. I'm the senior design lead for the Xbox Research and Design Organization, which is focused on like the core Xbox experiences across console, mobile, PC, web, and now cloud.
Awesome. Thanks, Miles. Melissa, want to go?
Hi. Yeah, my name's Melissa Allen. I'm originally from Jersey, which is obviously the best state. I I work for Minecraft these days as a lead data analyst, helping to through data find ways to improve the user experience, the player experience.
All right, and last but certainly not least, Jason.
Hey y'all, name's Jason. I'm from Virginia mostly, and I've been at Xbox now for a couple of years. I've done the State of Decay project. Now I'm on Halo Infinite. I'm a character lead technical animator. I think that's what they call it these days. I've been doing this for 18 years, and I'm just really happy to be here with y'all.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. To the chat and to the people who are viewing in, please send through some questions. We have a moderator kind of monitoring the chat, and they're going to collect your questions throughout. So as they come up, just go ahead and put them in the chat, and then we'll try to get to them. In terms of format, we're going to spend about 45 minutes just going through a couple of things, what each of these great panelists do in their day-to-day at Xbox, how they got into gaming, and maybe a little bit of advice to y'all of kind of how to get there as well. I mean, everyone here has such an incredible story, and they're pretty inspiring to just kind of share and see that path. But we also want to get to some of your questions too, so we will circle back to that once we get towards the end of the panel. So to start, like, y'all had a bunch of different titles and crazy roles, and I know, like, when I was first looking at games, I was like, I don't understand what they do. Even the same job title that have 3 different descriptions. And so I think one thing that's really interesting, and just to kind of level set, is going a little bit and explaining, what it is that you do as a designer, as a data scientist, as a character artist, like just those various things. Can y'all dive into that a little bit more and talk about your day-to-day? And to start off, why don't we start, Jason? Can we start with you?
Sure. All right. So my title starts out as lead. So I'm the head of my group, and my group is in charge of getting the characters into the game in a technical fashion and making sure that there's no problems. Because making games, there are always these little bugs that come up. It's a very dynamic system, and someone needs to be the head person on top of that. And so next bit's character. It's all characters for me. Whether it's, the people that are just running around in State of Decay or the elites in Halo, we have to make sure all those bits, and they end up being my responsibility or my team's responsibility. And so a lot of the making sure all the people go. Now the technical animator bit is, that's where I went to school for. I'm inside of Maya every day. I'm inside of the game engine every day. I'm looking into black boxes, figuring out how they work, or helping my team figure out how that communication is. As a manager, I have to do a split. I do a little bit on the people side, a little bit on the technical side. I mean, I do basically everything from it. There's some Python coding, there's some rigging. I mean, this morning I was doing some modeling just because there's things that need to be done. So yeah, there's a big breadth there.
Thank you. Melissa, you want to share next about just kind of being a data scientist and what that goes?
Yeah, I like the way you broke things down, Jason, so I'm going to copy that format a little bit. Yeah, so my title is lead data analyst or data scientist. In this case, it's a little bit synonymous. My focus is on business insights, but again, that's just jargon. What it means is that, my team, the data science team, is focused on understanding how to make the game more fun. And so fun can be broken down in a myriad of ways. My focus is specifically on stability and performance. So, for example, one question I might look at is, as you're playing a game, at what point in the player experience in your gaming journey does performance start to degrade? And so I go through this scientific process of very much going back to maybe your middle school or high school days of setting up a hypothesis, testing that hypothesis.
Uh-oh.
Oh no.
And then did I lose you guys?
You're back.
You're back.
Okay, sorry. I go through the scientific process of testing a question that might help us improve the experience for users. Data science is really interesting because it is a hodgepodge of things. It lives at the intersection of computer science, which is my background. I got my undergraduate degree in that. Storytelling, subject matter expertise, as well as math and statistics. So it's a really fun space. I am also a lead. I manage a team of one. And as I mentioned, our focus is on stability, but also the whole vertical of Minecraft education. I think I bounced around a lot more than I meant to, but I'm happy to answer any specific questions.
Miles, what do you do?
I do. So I ask myself that question all the time. So yeah, I'm design lead for the Xbox Research and Design Organization, which I mentioned earlier. And as a designer, I should be more specific and say, like, I'm a product designer or a user experience designer or an interaction designer, whichever one label you'd like to use. To be honest, I think they all ultimately mean the same thing, which is being a designer for digital experiences. I got into this because, frankly, I just like art, and there was a segue from a interest in art as a kid into like actually having a career and being able to be creative for a living. And I discovered the field of graphic design, and it kind of led me down a path toward product design eventually, because lots of opportunities started becoming available to that. And I really think that there's an interesting segue between art and technology, and product design is like the perfect overlap between those concepts. And it's like the perfect thing for somebody like me who has a lot of interest in both. So I mentioned that I'm a lead specifically for the Xbox community design team. So I manage a small team of designers where we're focused on the social experiences for Xbox. So think like friends, chat, parties, looking for group, capture sharing across all Xbox products, but we also focus heavily on the Xbox mobile app and the Xbox Family Safety mobile app as well. Like I mentioned, it's a fairly small team, and we work really closely with our development and product management partners, as well as data scientists as well, to figure out like, well, what do users actually want? How good of a job are we doing at the things that we are currently providing to users? Is there opportunities to like craft a better experience? So that means taking in a lot of feedback. One thing as a designer, you have to have not only a thick skin, but also be able to understand like, hey, people are expressing the things that they want. And not all the time is it like a literal expression of what they want. So we have to also take some time to understand, like based on the feedback that we're being given, what ways can we improve the product, or what new things can we provide users that maybe they don't even think that they would want, but if we were to release it and make it available, perhaps they would love.
Awesome. Thank you. And I see all these questions in the chat. I want to acknowledge that I see them. And we will, like I mentioned before, keep putting them in there. We'll grab them all, and we're going to answer as many as we can as we go through it. But to wrap us up, Sierra, you want to explain your job and what you do?
Sure, yeah. So as I mentioned, I've been in Xbox for a minute. And so I actually started in web services, working on a number of things: privacy, fitness services, marketplace. And then ultimately I was on achievements. And so I worked on Xbox Live Achievements. I owned that for about 5.5 years. Then switched from that to game developer education for a while. And so for the last couple of years, I've been, as I mentioned, on the product engineering team. And so my title is Principal Program Manager. So I'm a program manager, which despite what it sounds like, does not mean that I'm the boss of people necessarily, because they do not have to listen to me. And so a lot of the skill set, one of the main things you hear, I think, starting in a career path down PM is leading without authority, that whether you're a lead in title or not, you still need to have the skills to kind of work with people, collaborate, negotiate, try to understand different people's point of view, and really hopefully keep the customer at the center. And so that's a lot of what we do on the team that I'm on now, is really looking across as we're working on our different products and devices, how to, like, what are the main experiences or benefits that we want customers to get out of that. And then we work across, or I'll speak for myself, I work across different engineering teams, so feature teams in different areas, as well as the content teams, so first party, third party games, working with our different marketing teams across console marketing, games marketing, accessories marketing, and business folks as well, research, design. So a lot of it, as you can see, is me talking with and meeting with a lot of people constantly and trying to kind of build a cohesive product that bears all those different parts in mind, but where we're kind of marching to the same beat to ultimately give some benefits to the customer, and make a system where we can support publishers and developers as well.
Awesome. So one of the things I keep seeing coming up in the chat, and it's a question that I think we get often, is like, how did you get in? Like, what was your journey into gaming, right? It feels like there's this magical wall that's up, and then once you get past it, like, you know, everybody has their secret way of how they got past that wall. And so I think it would be great, and Melissa, I want to start with you on this one. If you could share just, you know, what your background is when it comes to your education and what you kind of got a degree in school, and then your path into getting into gaming, you know, what jobs potentially you took before, what types of things that you kind of focused on to help, you know, position you well to get into the industry and get you to where you are today. And you got to come off mute for us. You're on mute. You're good. You're good.
Thank you. Yeah, I've been in the industry for 7 years at a few different positions. I graduated in 2013 with a major in computer science and a minor in game design and development. And so game design and development, which was fun for me, because it wasn't a directed focus. I wasn't just doing animation, or I wasn't just doing art or pick your thing. I took psychology classes. I took classes in electrical and computer engineering. I took classes in the art department, psychology, all of these things. And it was just a means for me to explore a myriad of interests that I had at the time. When I graduated, I was applying all over. I even applied to Xbox, and it didn't work out. But I got a job at the Walt Disney Company here in Seattle. And I was working on, we were trying to, with the new suite of toys, sort of spin the gaming industry on its head. What does a video game system or a video game console look like without a television screen if it's just audio and haptics? I worked on that project for 3 years. It was amazing getting to work on an embedded device that is hardware systems mainly as a computer or software engineer. And after 3 years, the project was launched. That was in 2016. It flopped in the market, which was, I don't know, funny for me. I remember going into Target and seeing it in the stores, and then, you know, what felt like a minute later it was out of stores. But what was awesome about that experience was that it set me up for my job at Xbox. So because I had this experience as a software engineer, but focused on hardware, I applied for some job at Xbox, and the recruiter was looking at that role as well as other roles. And she said, hey, you know, you might not be a good fit for the role that you applied for, but actually there's this other role happening within the controller space that I think you might be more appropriate for. I said, okay. I took the interview or set of interviews. That process looked like 2 phone calls and a 6 to 8 hour on-site interview. And, you know, I got the offer. I worked on the input side or controller side for 3 years, mainly focused on accessible input experiences, owning the end-to-end quality of that. But as my experience grew, I ended up spending more time with data. So data ended up being important for us because yes, we do manual testing. Yes, we do automated testing for our controllers, but we also, once those controllers are out in the field, we examine for the entire population how those controllers were performing once they're in the houses of real people. So that's where my data experience started to come in. I got very interested in that. So I spent a lot of time, you know, building up my Python experience, taking classes in data science, refreshing my statistics from I don't know, high school. Sorry for the cursing. And I eventually took a leap and applied for this lead data science role within Minecraft and got the role. So that's been my experience. I think, in short, how did I get into the industry? I kept doing the things that I found exciting and interesting. I took psychology classes, I took art classes. I didn't know where it was going to get me, but staying in the areas that I was excited about kept leading me into positions that I liked and each position helped guide me to figure out what exactly I wanted to do in the next stage of my career.
And Melissa, just really quickly, because I saw a question kind of come through the chat. Within the data science field, you know, there's some folks here who maybe are focused on, you know, data analytics, but they don't quite do the hardcore programming aspect of things. You know, are there paths kind of that can, you know, are partners that you work with that still, you know, focus on data analytics, but don't necessarily have programming skills? Is that an available like career path for folks?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So yes, my experience is, you know, traditional computer science, but like I said, data science is at the intersection of computer science, math and statistics, subject matter expertise, storytelling. And so my peers, you know, a couple of them have their PhD in like I don't even know, biotech. Other people are, you know, have their master's degrees in math. And so we all come from, some people have come from banking in the financial world. We all come from different experiences. I think half of my team have had no computer, programming or computer science experience whatsoever. And we support each other in the areas that we are weaker in, and we support each other, or I guess we learn from each other in the areas that our peers are stronger in.
Thank you very much. And there's a lot of people who are interested in game design and want to know game design. So like same question, rewind back. Tell us about your journey and your path in, like what you majored in. I think it'd be great too if you can sprinkle in, focused areas, maybe with programming languages or resources that you used. I think a lot of folks are interested in that as you kind of built up the skill set to prepare you to get into games.
Sure, absolutely. It's real funny because I went to traditional college for a year. I found myself not really making anything happen. So I decided, I need to make a change. I need to go for an actual career. I need to start really working on this. And so I told all my buddies, I'm like, hey, I think I'm gonna go into the Marines. I think that's the place for me. My friends are like, no, that is not the place for you. No, we'll find something else. And one of my friends found Full Sail down in Florida. So we ended up making a trip down there. I fell in love. I started that. And I think that's where I started my career. Is I got some early advice, and that was what you put in is what you get out. So when I got into college, I worked my butt off every hour. All it was about work. All it was is school. And through the process, I learned about art and Maya and how to animate and the principles of animation and how to put a rig together. And there was a moment when I was in a lab late at night, like 2 or 3 in the thing, and the person running it says, hey, you're in here all the time. Have you ever heard of, and mind you, this is 20 years ago, Mel? And I'm like, Mel, what is that? It's like, oh, it's a programming language inside of Maya. You just do a thing and it pops out. I'm like, oh, that's amazing. And I hooked onto that. I'm like, ooh, I want to know more. I didn't have a programming background. I never took any formal programming classes at that point. So I just started kicking it. And my whole thing was, I went to SIGGRAPH talk and I saw someone do something. I'm like, I think I can do that. I'm going to try to do that in my own way. So I started building an auto rigger. And that was my senior project, right? I just constantly worked on it. And I got out of school, and mind you, this entire time I'm thinking, I'm going to go into movies. I play video games all the time, but I think movies is the place for me because they do all these really great animations and the characters are just so cool and I love story. And so that's what I was focused on. But I get out of school doing good. I start sending out my demo reels. And back in the day, it was like actual VHS tapes. I sent out like 100, 200 of them to different movie places, at the smallest, the biggest. And I got like 2 replies. So out of 100 different applications out there, I got 2 replies. But at the entire time, I kept on working on my senior project and I kept on putting it out there. And I was coding up this Mel thing that would auto rig. At the time, it was pretty much the cutting edge of what people were doing, modular base and all that. And someone contacted me from a little place in LA saying, hey, so I see you did this thing. Do you want to work over in LA? How about it? And I'm like, yeah, I just want a job. What do you guys do? I don't care. If I can use my skills, let's do it. I'm like, yeah, we make video games and all this stuff. I can do that. Let's do that. I like video games. Let's do that. So my start was on Fight Club. And quickly I jumped in, I got on the team, and it was a very high-paced place and I didn't have any mentors. But there's where I learned how to do a for loop. So for all of you programmers out there, I have done, at that point, thousands of lines of code, and I didn't know how to do an actual for loop, a simple like logic of programming. I'm super feral. I could put things together, I could make them work, I could tell the computer how to do it, and I didn't know how to do a for loop. But the reason why I was able to get to where I got is because I didn't let anything hold me back. I just kept working, kept doing it, kept pushing forward as much as I possibly could. And I didn't actually stay at Fight Club till the end of it. I really needed some direction, some mentorship. And so I started looking around, and I actually ended up with a group in Santa Monica run by Sony. At the time, it was an unnamed project, but it later became God of War. And that's where I really got my teeth cut. I took some actual C programming classes because at the time I was doing MailScript. That's all that Maya had. And as the years have gone on, Python has become the major thing. I know a lot of you have asked, what languages could you learn? It's constantly one of those barriers I have for doing more is not having a lot of C++ experience. If I did a proper computer training stuff, I would have done that, but I'm so busy with everything else. Learning at this stage has been a little bit difficult, but Python, I have become an expert in, and it has become a very major programming language. And what I do and a lot of the extra tools, I'm able to jump in and see it. And when you're talking about a formal language like Python or C++ or C, they're formal languages. And being able to speak a formal language anyway, it will help you get the next one. A lot of the programmers I know work on everything from Rust to JavaScript to C to C++, SQL. Someone just told me the other day, Excel is a programming language now. So there's that to look forward to. All of those things help, and it's being able to talk in a formal language is huge. Yeah.
Yeah, I want to pause there for a second, and I'm going to get to Sierra. I'm going to come to you next for your story, but I do want to share, since I'm the least technically capable person on this call amongst my Xbox peers here, for those of you who are on watching this and you're saying, I'm getting a business major or I'm getting a non-technical major, but I really have a passion in games. I personally was an accounting major. That's how I started my path into gaming. And similar to all of the other folks, I had a interest and a desire to get into games, and I leveraged what I had known, because the great part about gaming is there are accountants that work in gaming. Like there's finance roles in gaming, there's business roles in gaming, there's marketing roles in gaming. Every role that exists, every major you could follow exists in gaming. Even if you're in psychology or any of those things, all of those things are applicable to gaming. So don't fret if you're like, dang, I'm a senior or I'm a junior and I really want to work in games and I didn't take a computer science degree. It's all good. You can find your path and find your way into it by positioning, learning, and I think you've heard from both Melissa and Jason, taking some extra time to learn extra skills to help better equip you to be into games, because you'll notice there'll be similarities between a lot of these folks' stories that they learned outside of their core kind of competency, and they have a breadth of understanding of how it works, because all of this stuff is so intertwined. It's important to kind of understand your counterparts and how they work together, whether that's art and programming, whether that's marketing and development. All of those things, the way that you do it at its best is really having an understanding for what each other do. So yeah, don't fret about that. And I want to just interject with that piece, because I know that if I was sitting on this call, me as an accounting major, a senior year, I'd be like, I guess I ain't working in games because I don't know how to do none of that stuff. So,
anyway. One more quick interjection. One of a stakeholder that I work with pretty frequently, she spent 13 or more years as a teacher in middle school, and now works within Minecraft education. So
there you go. Sierra, share kind of your path into the industry and any other like words of wisdom throughout your journey that you think might be helpful?
Yeah, sure. So the kind of speed run version is that, so I'm like probably many folks who are joining this summit, that I played games since I was a little kid, board games, video games. I grew up as an only child until my sister was born a lot later, when I was like 15. But before that, you know, I was an only child. So I'd play like board games by myself even, which, I mean, sounds sad, but whatever. I'm proud of it. But it taught me discipline and integrity, to stick to the character I was playing and not switch over to somebody who was winning. Anyway, but no, so like games have always been a part of my life, something that I enjoyed as a hobby. And when I got interested in computer science, computers, I actually learned computers because of games, because I had a super basic computer back in the day. This is like in the 90s. And so, you know, installing the game, that's how I learned DOS, because I had to figure it out to do it myself. And so, you know, anyway, so that developed my interest in computers. From there, I got interested in computer science. And so I went into it. But even when I was in college, I was like, I don't really want to work in games, because at the time, all I thought working in games meant was that you had to work in graphics or AI. And I was like, I'm not really that interested in either of those. So continue to pursue computer science, did an internship with Microsoft, got the job here. So like my background had been working in web services at a company before Microsoft, and then at Microsoft working, I started off working on a commerce services platform team. So if you think about something like Square or Stripe and how different businesses, small businesses especially, make use of those to kind of handle their billing. Within Microsoft, we have a similar kind of team that does that billing for a lot of the different businesses within Microsoft. So I worked on that team to start. I started basically as a programmer, and then I switched to program management while I was in that group. And then when I was looking to make a switch, I was looking around Microsoft, and then I said, you know, Xbox, sure, let me take a look. And like Marcus said, that's when I realized, like, oh, right, Xbox is a whole ass business. So like they have all kind of jobs, right? Like not the kind of, I had sort of boxed my own self in of thinking about what I thought it meant to work in gaming. And so then once I actually looked at some of the job recs and things that were out there, then I'm like, oh, okay, they got all kind of stuff. And I like to joke that I came in through a window, whereas a lot of people go to kind of the front door trying to get into the gaming industry of like, hey, I love games. I want to make games, which, by the way, you rarely will, unless you do it yourself, you will rarely be in a position to just like single-handedly make the game, just because it's so complex. But anyway, so a lot of people come to the front door in that way. And I like to say I came in through a window because I basically took skill sets that I had that were maybe a bit more unique for people trying to get into gaming, which in my case was having experience working on payment services and billing services. And so my first job in Xbox was working on the marketplace team for Xbox.com and Games for Windows Live. And so that's something where, you know, I don't think they were even specifically looking for somebody with commerce experience. But because I had that experience, then I think it kind of gave me an extra leg up, because then I was able to hit the ground running on certain aspects of the job that maybe other people wouldn't. So that's one of my pieces of advice in general, is to not necessarily look at what seems like the most obvious path in, or, you know, what you think it might be, but actually go look around, especially now, because the internet, you know, there's so much information. So go to like Gama Sutra and read different accounts of people who actually work in the industry talking about what it is they do, or how they got in, or what their company, like, you know, what their role is, and look around at different studios or, you know, game platform makers like Xbox or whoever, look at the job openings they have, even if you're not trying to apply right this minute. But it'll give you a better sense of what a lot of those different jobs are that are out there. And you'll probably surprise yourself with some of the things that are available that you just never considered. And then you can kind of get the motor going about like, oh, okay, well, what skills do I have that I can maybe leverage in some of these jobs that would probably be a good fit and can maybe help set me apart even? Or if there's something where I'm lacking, then how can I pick it up? So, because I know I've seen a lot of questions in the chat asking about specific tools and specific languages and things. And I think, at least for me, coming from a computer science background, it's like once you know one language, you can pick up others, right? And so I think that same spirit applies actually across tech in general, not just gaming, but where it's usually less about any specific tool. Like sometimes it is really useful. Like I can't speak for animators, but like if Maya is kind of the main thing, then of course, the more knowledgeable you are, the better. But in general, it's a lot more about you having the thinking around the job. And so I saw Melissa replied in the chat to somebody about getting hands-on experience. And I'm a huge proponent of that for now, especially compared to when I was starting my career off, where a lot of things were out of reach because of cost or, different things. But now, since there's a lot of stuff that's free or inexpensive, to just get out there and get your hands dirty, like try to make a game, try to make part of a game. If you like to draw. If you like to do music, do that, like do whatever the things are that you like doing. And in that way, you're exercising the muscle. And it's not necessarily that any particular project you did, somebody's about to be like, oh my God, you've blown my mind. Like, please get in my company right now, right? It's not so much about that. It's more about you just exercising the skills and the thinking, because then you'll learn stuff like, as you coming from a programming background, as you're doing things where then you're like, oh yeah, cool. Can I even make this thing work? And then once I made it work, I'm like, well, that was janky. Like, can I make it work better? Is there something I could do different or whatever? And so a lot of that thinking that you'll naturally go through, that's the stuff typically that companies are looking for, because they're like, they can teach you how to use any particular tool. Like, even if you already know how to use the tool, you're going to have to learn how to use it the way that they use it within their team. So
I want to second that for a second before, Miles, we jump to you and you kind of share your story. I interned at Xbox as an MBA student, and great part about being an intern is you get real great access to like really senior people. And Matt Booty is the head of our studios, and a passion that I had was I wanted to work more closely with game developers. Like, I love the games. I wanted to work with the game developers, and so I got to sit down with Matt, and I said, hey, this is what I want to do, and he told me, why don't you go make a game? Exactly to Sierra's point. Like, and I had no skills in that. He's like, but go look at YouTube. Unity's there. Like, make a game. Spend part of your summer trying to do that. And I think, I'm never going to be a programmer or an artist or anything like that. But there is something, people ask a lot, like, how do we kind of stand out in your distinct field beyond saying, like, I love games? It's showing that, right? Showing that passion, going that step above and beyond, even if it's outside of your field. And so I spent the summer, I made a game I sent to Matt Booty. He said it was passable. So I felt very accomplished making like a little endless runner. I called it starting block because I thought that was cute, because I was like the start of my journey. But those things of being really curious and then acting on that curiosity, even if it's outside of the scope of, you're a writer and you try to program, or you're a programmer and you try to draw, like all of those things, just they help solidify and set you, a step above as you're trying to kind of put your book together or put your story together. And you're bringing that to kind of employers, showing that, creating that tangible, make a Twitch channel, like whatever it is. Those things are really, really helpful in kind of driving that forward, that kind of, set you apart beyond just the core skills of learning Maya or, being a talented artist or whatever else it might be. So I would encourage y'all to do that. Miles, I know we've heard a lot of great stories. So on to you on anything you would want to focus on through your story, coming from graduating college and kind of to your point now.
Yeah, certainly. So I might be a bit unique here and say that I actually did not intentionally look for a role in gaming. It kind of found me. Um, and Marcus, to your point earlier, you're not the only one with no technical background. I got an art degree. Um, I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but I grew up in Houston, Texas, primarily, a little bit all over the place. But and as a kid, I was just insatiably curious about everything. I loved learning. I loved sci-fi. I was a huge nerd. Comic books, video games. But if there's one thing I enjoyed more than anything else, it was art. It was just drawing, pencil and a paper. I was that kid who'd finish his work early and would be drawing, and all the other kids would be paying attention to like what I was doing. I got in trouble for that sometimes. I'll end up. I just knew I had this interest, but also I'd say that I didn't have a ton of support. It's not like a journey to how to be an artist when you're a little kid. And as I got older, my mother, like many mothers, would come and ask, like, so what are you going to do when you graduate high school? And to be honest, I was pretty aimless. I didn't really know. She said, hey, go figure it out, and pushed me to go into some sort of engineering or business sort of thing, things that she was familiar with and things that seemed like it would be a good direction for me to go in. But I'll never forget this. I had an epiphany moment my senior year of high school where I was put in a wrong class, like my schedule was wrong. And the first period that I had was an animation class. And in that animation class, the teacher, I walked up to him and said, hey, I think there's a mistake on my schedule. And he was like, that's fine. Just sit down. We'll go through the rest of class and I'll sign your papers. You can get that fixed after class. Cool. But he started explaining his background, and he was a trained graphic designer. He went to LSU and learned graphic design there. He started describing his own background and like what he did, how he got into that. And I was like, oh, that just sounds like me. Like, that's what I like. He talked about drawing and loving solving problems, and how he, as a designer, kind of got to put the two of those things together, because the design is really just the intent behind a product, service, or a mark like a logo or an advertisement, is putting the creative juice behind like ideas. And that really resonated with me. So after that class, he really just hammered into me like, hey, here's how you go about being a designer if that's the route that you want to take. And I hopped right into it. I wanted to go to like one of the nice private art schools, because most of the top design programs in the country were all private art schools, like RISD or SCAD or Ringling down in Florida. There's like a bunch of really, really dope ones. And I really wanted to go to one, but they were very expensive, if you didn't know. And at the time, I was thinking like, oh, I don't know if I could do that, which in hindsight, I'm so glad that I didn't, because I discovered Texas State University, a state school just a couple of hours away from Houston, had one of the top design programs for any public university in the country. I was like, oh, okay, well, I'll just go do that. And honestly, one of the things I loved the most about it was the fact that it wasn't just a art only program. It was a program that was, well, I mean, it's a public university, right? Like I had to study everything: art, science, mathematics, writing. I got just to touch everything. And I think that was perfect for someone like me who has just so many interests. But when it came down to it, it was still all about design. And I like just immersed myself in it. I used to live at the studio. They had like the art building was just a studio of creatives for every discipline you could think of. You had your designers who were going to do the communication design program. So the program I went through was really focused on like art direction, advertising, traditional graphic design, like making logos, brochures, packaging, signage, all very dope stuff. And to be honest, I really like that sort of work, and I still dabble with it from time to time. But simultaneously, I'm going to date myself a bit, but the iPhone came out, and that just changed the game for designers everywhere. Next thing you know, it's not just Apple that is leading the charge in having like high quality, very visually aesthetic, good looking products. Everybody wanted to do that. So next thing you know, designers are some of the top paid roles in tech jobs, period. And I was like, I want me some of that. That sounds good. Why not take that route? And honestly, not even just for the money. Like I love the idea of being able to like design products that people love so much that they use them every day. It becomes habitual. They don't even think about it anymore. That to me seems so interesting. So I just started down that path, and I didn't really have a ton of support in the school that I went to. So I had to like learn a lot on my own. So I'm sure all of you know private art schools and these public universities, they can't change their curriculum quickly. So they couldn't adjust to like this newfound opportunity as fast as I might have wanted them to. So I had to spend a bunch of time figuring that out on my own. And I just really got into like web design and learning about all the various mobile app products that were now starting to explode. And spending more and more of my time trying to design for those, especially as I was finishing up school. And I really wanted to like leave Texas and go to like Silicon Valley where all the hot design jobs were. I never made it there, but I think just aiming in that direction really set me off on a really nice path. I in Austin, which is about 20 minutes away from Texas State University. It's a short drive to Austin, Texas. I interned for the Livestrong Foundation because it was a really strong brand, and this was like pre-scandal. So Livestrong was still pretty cool for everybody at that time. So I interned there as like a visual designer, where I was just working on things like their advertisements, web banners, like simple stuff like that. Nothing really fancy, but it's still like a heavily needed role, right? When I graduated, I wanted to try to stay in Austin because Austin was turning into this, turning into the tech hub that it is now. I wanted to stay there, but there were like no design jobs because designers were flocking from all over the country into Austin. And it became like such high competition for design jobs that us who were just graduating, we didn't stand a chance. Everybody wanted the people who had like a few years of experience. So I honestly, I just kind of floundered for a couple of months until I was like, you know what, I'm getting out of Texas. And I just started applying everywhere, anywhere I could see. And I got a bunch of like, yeah, well, a bunch is probably misleading. I got several callbacks. And one of them happened to be a company by the name of Zappos, based in Las Vegas. For those who don't know, Zappos is a Amazon subsidiary. They had just been purchased by Amazon by the time I started applying. And to me, it was like, oh, this is kind of a foot in the door to the tech industry because the role that they had available was a visual designer to do things like their merchandising, web banners, web campaigns, art direct photo shoots, the sort of things that I already knew about. But they also had a mobile app. So I took the job and I moved out to Las Vegas, which was honestly a little scary at the time because I had never lived away from my family like that. And I was halfway across the country, away from everybody that I knew. But, you know, like all things, you get comfortable eventually. And I loved the job at Zappos. I learned a lot there. RIP Tony Hsieh, who was the CEO who recently passed. They created a really interesting environment there where I got to just meet and interact with so many people. One of which happened to be the UX design team there. I wasn't a part of that team, but I got to know those guys and I went over to them all the time. They probably were pretty annoyed by me, to be completely honest, because I would just always go over there and ask what they were up to and was always trying to say like, hey, let's collaborate on something because I just wanted to learn what they were doing. That was the role that I wanted. And I hoped secretly that, hey, they'd have an open role one day and be like, hey, Miles always wants to talk to us about this stuff. Maybe he'd be into it. That never came. And eventually I realized that I wanted to do something else. And I started applying all over the place for different types of roles. And one of them happened to be at IBM in Austin, Texas. And to be honest, I didn't really think much of it, no more than any of the other roles that I applied to. And I happened to learn that at the time IBM was trying to build up the largest UX design studio in the world. They were trying to hire upwards of 1,000 designers in just a couple of years. And they literally didn't have enough designers available because, again, you got to think of this not just from, hey, we have 1,000 jobs, but it's like, hey, we have 1,000 jobs, but every other company is trying to compete for designers simultaneously. And they were in such dire need of designers that they were willing to help designers learn the craft of product design. And to me, I was like, hell yeah, let's do that. I get paid to learn a little bit more about how to do this. And they had this program called Design Camp, which was like this 3-month long program, which was this immersive experience for learning, not just product design, but also design thinking. And I think more importantly, design from a B2B standpoint. IBM isn't really in the consumer market anymore. It focuses very much on products for other businesses. And me going in there, I was hoping to work on things like cool apps, but you find yourself working on things like cloud development platforms or back-end services for e-commerce sites to use. It was just all these things that I never thought about needing designers. But one of the things that started to happen is B2B software was lagging behind all the consumer software. So people started getting very much accustomed to having like high quality experiences in the things that they keep on their, on your phone. But pilots who got to land planes and teachers who were trying to organize their classes, or truck drivers with dashboards in their cars. The UX of those products was just lagging behind, and IBM was trying to take advantage of that and was giving honestly, I think a pretty dope opportunity for a lot of people to come in and to learn some of that sort of design work, which is just a little different than what a lot of us learned in college. And I'm so happy I had that opportunity. I learned a ton there. I worked on IBM's cloud development platform. I eventually became the design lead for the DevOps design team. And going into it, I knew nothing about it, but I think it was one of the smartest things that I could have done because product designers work a lot with developers. And while I am not anyone technical, I got to learn to design products for technical people. And by doing that, you learn a lot about, well, how does a development lifecycle work? How do development teams actually go about taking these, pixels that I hand them in the comps that I come up with? How does it go from, hey, that looks cool, to, hey, now a user can actually interact with that idea? I learned a ton there, and eventually knew that I needed to leave. I spent about 6 years at IBM and learned just an amazing amount of stuff there, and really expanded my network. I know people all over the world now. If you'd have asked young Miles drawing on the desk back in middle school if I would be somewhere like here, never in my life would I have thought so. By the time I was ready to leave IBM, honestly, I was looking all over the country. Even some roles outside of the country, even designers were just really in high demand, and particularly designers who started to develop a bit of experience being product designers in this new world of product design, really in high demand. And I got to kind of dabble around it, like, what would I want to work on if I could work on anything? And I bounced around and did a bunch of interviews. One of my buddies happened to have left IBM a couple years prior to come work for Xbox, the Mixer team to be specific. And when he found out I was hiring, he was like, dude, you got to come work for Xbox. And I had never thought about getting a job with gaming, but it sounded like a pretty cool opportunity. And I came out to the studio for an interview and I was blown away. I thought it could be like an incredibly interesting opportunity for me to learn consumer products, because I've been so much on like B2B products for years. And not only any consumer product, but one that people love as much as Xbox in an industry like gaming. One thing I'll end on is this. I think as a product designer, I think one of the best benefits of it is that you can be a product designer for any industry, anything. It doesn't matter what it is. Design, I come to believe, is more of a state of mind. And it's not even necessarily what you learn in school. It's more about how you approach problems and what skills you have to just do a little storytelling, express why we should go after certain things, and actually be able to show what that thing should look like. and be able to get everyone like bought into the idea of doing that thing. When you realize that, you realize you can work anywhere. And I think gaming has been one of really interesting space for me to work in. And it's been almost a year now that I've been with the Xbox Xbox Research and Design organization. And yeah, really interesting space that I'm still learning a ton about. One of the most interesting things is that I had no clue how strong the gaming community was before I even just interviewed. And I think it's been a really interesting experience for me.
Yeah, thank you, Miles. I appreciate it. I wanna try to do. We're gonna do like some rapid fire questions here, maybe like to go through some of these ones. But I do want to put a bow on just everything that was shared here to start, because I think a lot of folks, when you're coming out of school, you want to know what's the answer, right? What's the answer to get the job that I want? And I know this isn't going to be satisfying, but the truth is there is no answer. As you heard all of our panelists speak, they all had very different journeys into the gaming space. And so you're going to find your own journey and believe in it. But I think one consistent thing you'll have heard from everyone you speak to, particularly those who have found success in gaming, is they had passion. And that's not just passion for games themselves, but passion around design, passion around art, passion around programming. Like that is a thing that joins all gaming, the gaming community together, is that passion. And displaying that passion doesn't necessarily need to be directly to games themselves, but to the thing and the function that you have. So I'd encourage you all, like, lean into that passion as much as you can, demonstrate that passion in a tangible way as often as you can. Melissa has been kind of responding to some of the chats and talking to side hustles, side projects, those sort of things to kind of build your own book, whatever that might be. It doesn't need to be like, games that you made. It can be drawings that you have. It can be analysis of games that you have. If you're into journalism, you can write reviews for your games and start your own site. Like, all of those things are possible in creating your book. And I think I would encourage that. So rapid questions.
Hey, Marcus.
Yes.
Can I add to that?
Yeah.
One of the questions Gabby Payne had is about when making a character, is it traditional, just pen and paper? So this is a really interesting point to all of this, which is a character is made, like the one I'm most familiar with is Kratos in the original God of War series. That character is a iconic piece, but he had 20 or 30 different versions. And each version went from paper napkin drawing to a sketch drawing to some rendered out bit to a 3D model. And at each place, someone else put something into it. And it takes everybody a part of that process. So no one person made Kratos. No one person makes Master Chief. It takes a whole group of a lot of people from a lot of different places.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So I saw a couple of questions here. I'm going to answer this one. I saw, Marshall, you asked about voice acting in the gaming industry. I don't know of any resources, but what I've seen a lot, again, is there's things online that I've seen that, and a lot of people be successful of, like, doing auditions. Like there's a service, and I forget what it's called, and I'll try to follow up when I look it up, but you can just audition. You can start creating voices and creating roles and putting those up online for folks that are indie developers that they can grab and actually, tap you to come and be a part of their game. I'll try to circle back and figure out what that service is called, but there are resources online, and I'm not sure of any off the top of my head.
One thing I would suggest there too is follow some voice actors. Like, find them, follow them. Sometimes they blog or tweet or otherwise talk about their craft. And that's true across anything, is that, like, just if you don't know where to start, then find some people who are doing the thing. And from there, you'll probably end up kind of finding your way into where that sub community might exist.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm scrolling back up through. Thank you for adding that. Yeah, I'm scrolling back up through to see. I think, Melissa, you answered Aaron's question about internships. Did you answer that one already?
Yeah. I think generally my answer was, internships are awesome, but there are a myriad of ways in which you can get hands-on experience. It could be a capstone, it could be a side project, it could be, whatever. So just go out and find those hands-on projects.
Yeah. And I think we touched on most of the, Sophia, I see you reposted that, but I think we touched on everyone's journey and kind of their experience there. And I know we are at time. So I just want to close by saying, one, thank you to all of our panelists for spending the day with us. Thank you for BCGA for inviting Xbox. We are so happy to be here and to be able to participate and engage with y'all. And the last thing I want to end on, if I can, is for all of you who are interested in working in games, please do. We need you. We want you. Keep working to get to more Black people in games is just, we need that to happen. And so please reach out. Don't ever hesitate. I'm rooting for you. You belong here in the industry and we want you there. So keep going. And thank you all for joining again. Thank you all for having us. Thank you, panelists, for all of your great insights. And I hope to play games with y'all in the future. So have a great rest of your day, everyone. Thanks, everybody.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.